folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio, where it's one of my favorite days of the week. Once again, Workbench Wednesday. I hope you are having a great day wherever you are and whenever you happen to be watching this. Today, I want to delve a little bit into the backstory, the lore of my On30 Thunder Mesa mining company layout. Many times, viewers might hear me mention something called Nature's Wonderland, or they might see it on the side of a boxcar. In fact, it's right there in the middle of the Thunder Mesa Herald, the Nature's Wonderland route. And if they're not familiar with the lore, familiar with the backstory, they might not understand what that's about and where that comes from. So in order to understand it, we actually have to go back to the 1950s, right about 1957 to be precise. Many of you watching today may not be old enough to remember the old mine train through Nature's Wonderland attraction at Disneyland and its immediate predecessor, the Rainbow Caverns Mine Train, which actually opened in Disneyland in California in 1957. So try to imagine something that's kind of like the Jungle Cruise, except instead of on a boat, you're on a mine train, and instead of going through the jungles on a river, you are traversing the landscapes of the American Southwest. The original ride was based on Walt Disney's popular True Life Adventure series, in particular on one called The Living Desert. And there were several scenes and vignettes from that movie that were visible on the ride. The bobcat on top of the cactus is probably a good example. And it covered about 7 acres in Frontierland, cost nearly $500,000 to build, and it only lasted about 2.5 to 3 years before it was closed down and completely reimagined and redesigned as the mine train through Nature's Wonderland, which opened in 1960. And what that expansion did, that plussing of the ride did, well, it made it longer for one thing, but it also added in other parts of the American West. And so the ride became sort of a greatest hits of Western national parks. There was an erupting geyser, there were mud pots, balancing rocks, forests, waterfalls, deserts, saguaro cacti. And the climax was, spectacular Rainbow Caverns, which was basically like a dark ride. So you had this wonderful outdoor section of the ride going through all of these scenes with something like 200 mechanical animals that were battling elk and marmots and deer and bears. A lot of people remember the bears scratching against the tree down in what was then called Bear Country. Then after all of that, you would go into these cool air-conditioned caverns full of just incredible fluorescent water effects, fountains and waterfalls and things like that, all under the magic of blacklight. It was the height of theme park technology in the late 50s and early 60s. And those of us who actually had a chance to ride it as kids, it left an indelible impression upon our young minds. So Walt Disney assembled his Imagineers, and this was basically a dream team of first-generation Imagineers. Let me just read you some of the names. Roger Broggie, Sam McKim, Bob Sewell, Bill Martin, Bob Matty, Wathel Rogers, Vic Green, and Claude Coates. Claude Coates is the one who designed the spectacular blacklit water effects in Rainbow Caverns and figured out a way that the dyed waters wouldn't mix together. Something he had said was impossible, and this is where the famous quote from Walt Disney comes from. Claude Coates told Walt Disney it was impossible to do, and Walt said, well, go and try anyway, or words to that effect. And Claude Coates figured it out and came back, and that's when Walt Disney said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. Originally, the ride had a live onboard narration. The engineer would actually narrate the ride as you went through it, similar to the Calico Mine Ride at Knott's and to the Jungle Cruise. But later, a recorded narration was added by veteran voice actor Dallas McKennon, and that's where the old "howdy folks" comes from. That's Dal McKennon, and later they used him again when they recorded the narration for Big Thunder Mountain. And speaking of Big Thunder Mountain, that was the end of the original Mine Train through Nature's Wonderland ride. It was closed on New Year's Day of 1977 to make way for the new roller coaster, the wildest ride in the wilderness. And that was a sad day, but I like Big Thunder an awful lot too, as you can see from my modeling. So, you know, in a way, it's heartbreaking that that ride has gone to yesterland forever, but there's a lot of little bits and pieces of it left. A lot of the little mining town of Rainbow Ridge was preserved and is now the town above the queue for Big Thunder. There's a lot of tributes to it everywhere. The first lift hill on Big Thunder pays tribute to the old Rainbow Caverns section, though the effect is done differently there because they couldn't get it as dark inside. So it's gone, but there's a lot of nods to it, a lot of tributes to it that are still there. So when I first started planning my Thunder Mesa mining company layout, I knew that I wanted to incorporate a lot of stuff from Nature's Wonderland and to weave it into the story somehow. And what I came up with was the idea of Nature's Wonderland National Monument. You see, the backstory of Thunder Mesa in a nutshell is that it's the fictional, real-world prototype for Nature's Wonderland, Mine Train, the Calico Mine Ride at Knott's, Big Thunder, and the Disneyland Railroad. So that's what lets me get away with kind of just riffing on Disney stuff, but not copying it exactly. I never wanted to make an exact model of, say, Nature's Wonderland or the Calico Mine Ride or Big Thunder. I wanted to use those elements, those design elements here and there, and create something of my own, or as my friend calls it, sort of a greatest hits approach. So going back to Nature's Wonderland, that had to be a real place too. It had to be some place that the trains traveled through in order for that name to carry over, to the theme parks, etc. And that is what led me to the idea of creating Nature's Wonderland National Monument. I've always been a huge fan of our national park system. I love going and hiking and camping and staying and visiting and sightseeing in our national parks. And I've always been a huge fan of Theodore Roosevelt, who was so instrumental in setting aside large swaths of public land for future generations to enjoy, including our own Grand Canyon National Park here in Arizona. And so in around 1906, tensions were running high in Thunder Mesa country. The mines were beginning to play out, to be honest, and they were looking to expand into new territories that were controlled by, say, the Calico Mine Company or the Estrella and Sonora Grande. And things were getting ugly between these different mining interests. They were hiring bandits and gunmen to ride along on the trains just in case violence broke out. And if you think this is pure fiction, you should look into the history of the Denver and Rio Grande versus the Santa Fe down along the Arkansas River route. Now, fortunately, at that time, Teddy Roosevelt just happened to be in the area on a hunting trip. And he heard about the tensions in the area and offered to be a mediator between all of the different competing mining interests. Now, he had been on a tour of the area for quite some time, shooting lots of animals, which he liked to do, and taking in the natural wonders of the American West out here. And one thing led to another, and his solution was to set aside all of the area around here that wasn't already mining claims as Nature's Wonderland National Monument. Now, as reported in the local Thunder Mesa Gazette, this is what Teddy Roosevelt said when he signed the proclamation creating Nature's Wonderland National Monument. "Providence has been at work upon this land for untold ages, for here has been gathered an unmatched collection of natural curiosities and splendid scenic wonders. Verily, this Nature's Wonderland is an irreplaceable treasure of the United States and must be protected from the greed and petty concerns of short-sighted men." Now, of course, the railroads grumbled about this quite a bit at first, but it soon became clear that the official designation and endorsement of the very popular President of the United States would be a boon to local tourism. And so the Thunder Mesa Mining Company started to promote tourism in the area, running excursion trains to see the natural wonders like Old Unfaithful and Rainbow Caverns and Big Thunder Falls and the Cannon Arch and the Cactus Forest. So as the story goes, promoting tourism in the area turned out to be a great idea. And they ended up slapping the name Nature's Wonderland on the side of their boxcars and everything else in order to get people to come to the area. And that's why it says the Nature's Wonderland route in the middle of the Thunder Mesa logo. Thunder Mesa Mining Company actually ended up acquiring the Calico Gold Company and the Australian Sonora Grande, at least several of its assets. And so it was able to expand after all and survive well into the middle of the 20th century. And that in turn led to the rediscovery of the area just by a chance visit from Walt Disney and Roger Broggie and Ward Kimball, who happened to be touring this part of the American West in the early 1950s, looking for some inspiration for a new little park that was being planned out in Southern California. And the rest, as they say, is history. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this Workbench Wednesday dive into the fictional history of Thunder Mesa. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell to see more. You can also follow Thunder Mesa over on Instagram at thunder.mesa and see what's new on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. And if you really enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and want to show your support, you can do what these great folks did and go over to patreon.com/thundermesa and show your support there. Until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Adios for now.